Good morning. It is early-ish on a Tuesday morning, and I thought it'd be really cool to show you the behind the scenes of a song that I wrote, recorded, mixed, mastered, released, and recently got onto New Alternative Music, an Apple playlist, which is my first Apple editorial playlist that I've ever had, which is super awesome. I've been on a few Spotify editorials before, but the Apple playlist was really, really cool. And so I wanted to jump into the project, show you a little bit of how that was looking, and break down what's going on. Let's dive in. Here we are in the project now. So this is how it looked when I opened it. I am pretty organized with my projects because for me, as well as hearing it, I kind of like to visualize how everything looks. And I like to break it up into kind of my keys, my synths, my guitars, my bass, my effects, drums, and then lead vocals and backing vocals. And then what I've got up here is these two auxiliary tracks. I've got one for all the vocals and one for the instrument processing. So what I'll do is I'll dive into each section bit by bit and explain what's going on. I'll play just a little bit of it here.
I don't know what it's like to be liked by you. You don't love it like I do with you. Just say that you don't mind if it all falls through. We've been more like a broken CD player. It's time we called the static to better break up. We've been so turbulent, but it's all that we knew. No innocence. Everybody is a liar. Everybody knows something that I don't deny. So let it all go. That's the only way I'll know if you're not in it tonight.
Cool. And then we go into like a bridge and then another chorus towards the end there. So overall with the production, before I dive into the main elements, I wanted everything to be super intentional. So there isn't loads going on, but everything that is happening is really intentional. I wanted things to be kind of really poppy. So I didn't want huge wide reverbs and things like that, only on some things. I wanted everything to be quite intimate but large as well at the same time. That was kind of my goal behind this. So that's why you'll hear that there isn't huge amounts happening. Certainly in the beginning it's quite dry in a way. I just wanted that closeness. To me, I just really like that effect. I like the way that my voice sounds in this kind of genre with those sorts of effects. So that's just a personal preference. But let's break it down. So here are the drums. And the drums are programmed by me. And it's actually a kit that I made using the Neon Pack. From that sound, I picked up these samples from Splice. And if I press the H button here, it will open up all the hidden tracks. And you can see that this drum section here, this drum bus, this is a sampler. And so I actually played all the different parts on these relevant tracks here, these hidden tracks. These are the kind of original MIDI samplers. So, you know, these are where the original samples were played. And then I bounced each track out individually and then hid the MIDI tracks. And the reason for that is just to save a bit on processing power. You know, I like to sort of convert everything to audio. But if I just solo the track here and play it. The beat is incredibly simple. I wanted something that would just hold down the groove, hold down the beat. I really like these kind of beats, you know, 4 on the floor, very straight indie rock type things. I think it just allows the groove to dance around this really stable surface, if that makes sense. And the groove can come from other instruments like keys, guitars, vocals. And the drums are the things that people bop their head to. So I wanted to get that kind of stomping effect. So that's why they're pretty straight. The way that I typically process all my instruments is top down. So I tend to do the main bus first, and then I kind of tackle the individual instruments. And so that's exactly what I did here. I tackled the main bus sound using some different effects here. You know, we've got some transient shaping. We've got some kind of saturation here. Some additional, let's see what this is, saturation and parallel compression. We've got some additional clipping. And then what have we got here? This is probably a compressor. Yep, this is a compressor to give it a bit more punch and whack. And then we're just taming some of the frequencies with a dynamic EQ. And that's the top level. And then obviously what I do from there is I can navigate the more granular tracks and just focus on how they're sounding. So I press the H button. You'll see that on my... let's go for this snare here. You'll see if I just turn this track on, with all my plugins here, I've got quite a lot going on. There's some reverbs. This is giving me that kind of sort of really tight, gated sound in a way. We've got some additional, transient shaping and clipping. And then we're just doing we've got some excitement, we've got some additional transient shaping, some EQ. So everything kind of, it does a small amount, but it adds up to the whole sound. And that's what I try and do. I try not to think too technically about these things. I try and just make a sound that I like the sound of. And this is what we got. Moving down into the effects track, this is so simple. There is this one little click right here. It's just a little bit of noise. So what I didn't want was a crash cymbal necessarily. But what I did want was some kind of impact to bring everything in and to give it that initial energy hit without the tail of the crash. And so that's what this is. This is a little noise modular click from my sample library. And I just do it on the first beat up until, not even until the first snare hits, I don't think. It acts almost like an open hi-hat, but it's a bit more digital because it's white noise. And so I like to use that a lot. So that's good fun. And then we have some effects later on in the song. This is to really build the anticipation towards the end. And you can see I could have added these earlier on, but then I think it would take away the impact of these sounds later on. And we just got a sweep here, a Cashmere sample, if you're on Splice, and then a reverse cymbal here. And together they just sound like this. Super simple. Moving on to the bass. So the bass I processed in two parts. So I've got the live bass here, and it's all live. There's no synth bass on this one. And I'll just play the original tone here. I'll turn off all my effects. Sounds like this. So I use a Fender P-Bass. It's a single coil. I've had it for years. I am too stingy to buy myself a new one. So I just work with what I've got. And I think that's the amazing thing about production is that you can take a sound and make it sound completely different. So to me, I'm not bothered per se about the actual instrument that I use, so long as it's in tune and stuff and it does at least have a good bass sound, to me this is fine. And then I can really affect it. And so that's exactly what I did. So I didn't run it through any bass amps. I just ran it through plugins. My first was RC20, giving it some distortion and then doing a little bit of tone shaping here with the smiley mode and then turning that down. I then moved into some virtual mix rack. So this is Slate Digital. And we just did some further EQ shaping, compression, and tone shaping with this sort of saturation plugin here. I then used a tape emulation plugin. So this is really, really nice. I like the way this sounds. I added a compressor, again, just to smoothen out the sound. And then an additional, let's see what this is, parallel compression. So this just has a light little mix, but it's got some crunch and crush settings going on. So you heard the original sound, and after all that, it sounds like this. transformation, and I think it sounds really, really cool. I bounced it out, and in the main mix file, this is just a very simple equalizer and exciter. So this is just, again, taming some frequencies that I didn't want. As you can see from the waveform, it's already pretty consistent, so I didn't want to mess around with that. I left that as it is, and then the exciter, I just add a little bit in the middle here, and that's it, just in the little middle section here, just to make it pop out the speakers a bit more. And then the final thing was this track spacer, and this is basically ducking it to every single kick hit so the basses don't muddy up. And that's that, really. Moving on to my mid section, so guitars and keys. We'll take a little look at them. We'll look at the guitars first. I've got an acoustic guitar, but it only appears here at the beginning. I think this also might be a guitar. No, that's electric. So I've got an acoustic guitar. I did have it all the way through, but again, in a bid to really minimize and streamline the production, I felt like it wasn't adding anything and was making everything sound a little too busy later on in the song, so I decided to get rid of it. But the beginning guitar sounds like this. And I wanted that kind of old-time feel, slightly fairgroundy. And so again, in my hidden track here, you can see I've got all the processing. We've got some EQs, compressions, distortions. You know, it's all the same stuff. You know, when you're kind of crafting your sound, it's EQs, compressions, saturations, and distortions. These are the things that really shape your sound. The biggest thing that is giving it the sort of warbly effect is this tape Mellowfi. This is, or it certainly was, a free plugin from Arturia, and I couldn't believe it was free. It's so good. And so I've just got my kind of flutter and wow and wear up on this. And this is, yeah, it just gives it that really old-time feel. It sounds incredible. I love this plugin so much. So great. If you haven't got it, you should get it. Moving on to the other guitars, which is the electric guitars. What I've got here is a crunchy guitar, and there's only one that kind of runs through the entirety of the song, and it sounds like this. Later on in the chorus, the same guitar sounds like this. And again, I wanted that really classic feel to it. And so the main sound of this is coming from this kind of wide dimension chorus sounding effect. And that is coming from Refract here. Again, this was another free plugin from Arturia. I normally use a chorus Juno plugin, like this one here. But I wanted to try something a bit different. I wanted a slightly more extreme super saw kind of sound on the guitar. And this obviously has like a really classic sound to it, but it's not super extreme per se. It can be, but I just had a very particular sound in my mind with more voices, and that's where I got this one here. So Refract was perfect. Kind of ages it, but in a really cool, modern pop way. We then have only two more guitars in the song here. We have this one at the end of the verse, which sounds in context like this. We've been so turbulent. And yeah, that's just a triad sort of pattern. This is a really nice, simple way to add motion to your guitar. You just take the chords of your song, just play, figure out the voicings in triad form further up on the neck, and then play it. And that's what I got here. It adds a really nice movement, a really nice sort of feel to it. I do it a lot. And this one has got, again, just a guitar amp simulator on it. It's got the Juno chorus effect that I showed you before. So it doesn't have, it's not quite as extreme as you can hear, like the width of it. And like the chorus effect is there, but it's not as extreme as the first one I showed you. And then the final guitar is another triad, which is at the end here. And this one I actually automate here. So you can see I volume automate it up into the last chorus here. So I'll show you how that sounds. Tell me you don't mind if it all falls through. Every So with this guitar, I really wanted it to fill out everything, because at the moment, you know, everything has been really quite tight and compact, and this one I wanted it to be big and epic and open. So the way that I played this one, as you can hear, is way more legato, way more sustained on the notes versus, say, what I played here, where I kind of stop and deaden the notes on each new chord. This one, I tried to keep it all completely consistent. Again, just adds a little more energy. And same sort of thing, really. We've just got an amp sim on it. We've got some chorus, Juno. I think I just turned up the gain a little bit on the amp. Just wanted a bit more on it. And it came out like that. And this, in the last chorus, really adds a lot to make the final chorus sound huge, but with not much extra. So the synths are so interesting in this song. So the main one is this mellotron here at the beginning, and this accompanies the acoustic guitar for this old-timey effect. And when you pair that with the acoustic, I just think it sounds really, really good, you know. So I showed it to my wife and she said it was playful, a bit like YUNGBLUD or something like that, which I thought was a huge compliment, because he's kind of cool but still has that playful element, and I wasn't necessarily trying to go for that per se, but it came out like that, and so I'm really pleased it did, because now I'm thinking about it, it's really fun. Moving on, we then have little synth impacts and ear candy moments. So I've got these two little synths here, and if I play them on their own, so what the first one is doing, this is an impact, because leading into the main drop or riff, we have this kind of da 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 sort of melody, and this is just supporting that. But if it all falls through, and then this here, in a bid to not use crash cymbals for my impacts, I use this synth instead. And what that is, that's just me just playing a little arpeggio on the piano, and it's got like a nice long tail on it, nice long release. What we've also got in this section, so when the main melody comes in, we've also got this little synth arpeggio. And this was just to modernize the sound a little bit. This adds, the thing with adding synths is that they can add like a really nice contemporary modern sound to everything. So, you know, when you lay that up with, say, this crunchy guitar here, it fills out a few extra frequencies and gives you a few extra sounds blended into the whole track that you wouldn't have just on a guitar. And so I really like to use synths to support whatever the main instrument is doing, unless the synth is the main instrument. As you can see, I did have these pads here and this whirly sort of sound. But again, I actually felt like it was too busy. You know, if I play it sort of with them, without them first, and then with, to me, they're adding and padding out everything, but not in a way that felt good. Again, I wanted that intimacy, but that just kind of muddied everything up. It took away the clarity that I was looking for with the kind of drive and guitar and synth. So I muted them. They were in, but they didn't make the cut, unfortunately. The main event here is this brass section here. So this was like something really different, something I would never normally do. But again, it had that kind of playful sound to it. And this is made up of three primary sounds. We've got a mellotron brass instrument. I love using mellotron because it just ages things, but in a really cool way. So that's the mellotron. That's the bulk of the sound. But then I have got some additional trumpets here, which are playing. It just adds a bit of extra realism. So they're just kind of quite quiet in the back. They're not the main feature. They're there just to kind of flesh out the main sound and give it a few more harmonics that just sound cool. So I processed the whole thing, and a lot of it is coming from, let me check. Yeah, this here. So got some decapitator, so some saturation, and then I've got this kind of parallel distortion here. Again, just to really bring it up front and forward. And then we've also got this stellar echo, which is kind of like a tape echo, and that just gives it the width. And then obviously we've just got the the usual kind of compression, EQ, things like that. I do have this little kickstart plugin here, and this is adding just a little bit of a volume duck on every half note or every half beat. So you hear kind of at the beginning of every sort of each bar and then halfway through, it just ducks a little bit in volume. Nothing too intense, but again, this is more like a modern production technique. And when you add it to an old sound like a mellotron, you get some really interesting effects. Moving on to the lead vocal, you can see I've separated everything up here. And so we'll go break down what's going on. So if I press the H button again, it will open up all my hidden tracks. And I always process my vocals in 2 stages. The first is kind of the recording stage. So that'll be this one here. So this will be my raw vocal recording. And you can see, obviously, I've just comped, the best vocals. You see, I've done a lot of takes. I mean, this one says 72. I think I re-recorded the vocals 2 or 3 times on this because I just wasn't happy with how things were sounding. I know someone like Billie Eilish spends a lot of time really crafting and perfecting her vocal, and I don't much care for trying to get everything in one take. I kind of let my pride go in that sense. What I'm trying to do is create art, and this project is a blank canvas. And so I might as well use all the tools available to me to get the best sound so people can enjoy it. And it's a bit like a painter, they don't use just one brush. They don't just paint a picture in one stroke. They take many strokes. And that's how I like to view this. So anyway, I recorded the raw vocal. I comped it, as you can see. And then we added some Melodyne. Obviously, this is sort of the goated sort of tuning plugin. We then have some auto-tune. I always have quite a high retune speed with the flex tune turned up quite a bit. This kind of really tightens up the pitching, but keeps it sounding natural. I'm then using just a little bit of like a preamp saturation plugin. The CLA2A, a de-esser, and then an NS1. And this is kind of like, if I had hardware and I recorded into hardware, I'd probably run it into a chain similar to this. So to me, I treat this as my hardware chain, and I get like an initial sound. So if I just play how this sounds on its own.
I don't know what it's like to be liked by you.
And that's kind of my raw sort of dry sound. If I take away just all the effects here.
I don't know what it's like to be liked.
That's what it is. So this just adds a bit more clarity. I'm just really intentional with these plugins here. And then I bounce it out as is. And then I'm left with essentially what this vocal is here. And this is where I start adding all my additional effects. And so you can see I've got some, I think this is some parallel distortion. Yep. The Devil Lock is a great little parallel distortion plugin. We've got some gain. I think this is just so that I can change the automation of it, or not. I don't know why that's on there actually. Anyway, we've got some EQ. We've got some. This is a transient plugin, but it's got this little threshold limiter here.
I don't know.
So you can see I'm just taking away these peaks like this here, because again, I don't need them there. They're not adding anything, and I can easily cut them off. So again, that gives me a slightly more helps me achieve a louder mix. We've got some stellar echo on here. This vocal, I would say, is very stylized because you've got this kind of, again, this kind of vintage slapback effect going on here.
I don't know.
If I remove the stellar echo,
I don't know what it's like.
You hear how it's so up front. I didn't want that effect. I wanted dryness and up front, but I wanted a vibe as well. And so I got it from the effect here. There's no reverb on this, as far as I'm aware. No, there's no reverb on this. It's all just coming from this kind of stellar echo. And then we have some EQ compression, you know, the usual, blending it all into the track here. There is one moment, which you probably heard earlier, where we have this effect.
And if it all falls through.
This is like a wide chorus effect. I've got the exact same plugins as before, but I'm just adding CLA vocals here, and just mainly on this pitch here, I'm just adding a wide effect. And that's what's giving it that sound. So that's a super simple one. If we move over to the chorus here.
Everybody is a liar.
The processing is exactly the same as the verse that I showed you, but all I would have done was just adjusted, say, my parallel compression here to be a little more punchy, just so that there's more in the chorus. The other vocal that is really prominent in the chorus is this section here. So I love this section. This is such a cool moment, but I had a really particular sound that I wanted. And again, the processing is exactly the same, but the main sound comes from me taking the vocal here and really chopping it up. You see how I'm just cutting off all the ends here? There's all that ending there, but I didn't want that. I wanted a really tight, dry, you know, kind of staccato-esque. And so that's what that vocal is doing. And I do exactly the same on all the BVs, actually, which is what is giving it that really tight but nice effect. The only other thing I add in this kind of lead vocal sort of bus here is just this little delay here. And that literally leads us into the last chorus here.
And if it all falls through.
You may not really hear it if you're not paying attention, but it's there anyway. Okay, BVs. So, relatively simple case of what's going on here. I did have some falsetto. I did have doubles. A double here, which I think might have been this one here. But you can see that's turned all the way down. And I did have some ad-lib verb, but again, I turned that down. Again, it was all too busy, I think, for me. So I didn't want any of it to be there. So I'll show you what I did include, which is just doubles on select words. So that's what this kind of BV chorus section is.
Bayou, bayou.
On the bayou, it's really up there, prominent, but then you don't hear it anywhere else. I did have it for this next part here.
And if it all falls through.
I preferred the vulnerability of just the single vocal on its own. And then we move over to the chorus, and this is what it sounds like soloed.
Body is a liar.
So it's not, it doesn't follow all the lyrics. It follows the beginning and then moves into like a padded sound here. Again, really stylized. It sounds a bit whack on its own, but when you actually add it with everything.
Everybody is a liar. Everybody knows.
For me, BVs, I want them to be present and upfront, but I don't want them to be shiny. I want them to be quite dull because the lead vocal is shiny. You know, that's the thing that's kind of sitting at the front. And so this is where, you know, mixing, there is no one size fits all. I listened to how they were sounding against the lead vocal and I just shaped the tone to match what I wanted to hear and what sounded good. In the second half of the chorus, we have the same thing happening.
Let it all go.
And then we have this section. I remember I really wanted this kind of, do you remember the old THX sort of opening sequences? And it would have all these synths and sounds and they'd all be out of tune and then they'd come into one harmonious sound. I kind of wanted that here. And so altogether that sounds like this.
That's the only way I'll know if you're not in it tonight.
it's really subtle, but it kind of feels like you're then reaching this climax towards the end of the chorus, which is really, really cool. Okay, and the only other BV that I add is this ad-lib vocal here, which sounds like this, soloed.
Body's a liar, everybody knows tonight.
So this just adds a lot of extra energy above everything. I try and sing above the lead vocal, and in context, it sounds like this.
Everybody is a liar, everybody knows something that I don't deny. So let it all.
So yeah, I'm not one of those that can just ad-lib off the top of my dome and be happy with it. I'm very structured with my ad-libs. And so, yeah, to me, they all serve a purpose, which I like. I will just finish quickly the master chain here. The master chain here is a simple case of a standard clip, just to take away the peaks. We've got some compression. This is just a plugin that I use to check the relationship between the kick and the bass. We've got some soothe, and then we've got some ozone go-to plugin here. I did also use FGX2 here, which I really, really love this plugin. But I think the limiting effects in the Ozone 10 plugin, I think just edge it a little bit. It's super modern, super clean, and you can select these different modes. And so obviously I selected modern, which just gave me loads of clarity, but also volume as well. And so that is the song. That's the breakdown. In total, this probably took me longer than maybe some other songs because I came back to redo the vocals, but I'd say probably like 2 full days, and then it was done. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more breakdowns, let me know, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.